Hello, folks.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think this is us. Well, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you, everyone, for joining us from wherever you are. Welcome to the live Q&A. So my name is Thomas McGrath, and I'll be facilitating the session today. Thanks very much for joining us. So I'm a trainer consultant at Wright Limited, and I have the pleasure of being joined by two other fantastic trainer consultants, Colleen Trollope and Emily Coatlier. Thank you very much for coming along. I'll get Emily and Colleen to introduce themselves shortly, but firstly, I just wanted to give some context for our discussion today. So this session is being hosted by Write Online. This is a membership site that is run by Wright Limited, and it helps organisations and individuals like yourselves write clearly and collaborate effectively. So Write Online is a content library. It's made by our expert consultants at Wright. There's heaps of practical advice, videos, courses, templates, and you can access it all at your own pace. So it's a very self-guided experience. And so today's Q&A will be made available on Write Online as a piece of content. And you can email us at online@wright.co.nz if you want some information, and you can even get a free trial if you're interested. So today we'll be focusing on answering some questions about writing in general, but really we're going to be talking about the tips and tricks to help you write from home, because a lot of us have been put in quite interesting circumstances in our bubbles and having to try to work as we normally would in quite a different situation. So I'll introduce now our consultants, and I'll get them just to introduce them, tell us a little bit about themselves. So Colleen, welcome along. How are you doing? And tell us a little bit about how your bubble's going.
Hello, I'm doing very well, thank you. And my bubble is good. It's me and my two children, and I'm really enjoying this lockdown because we live right by the sea. So whenever I need a break, we're just over the road, standing on the rocks, breathing in that lovely air.
Nice, nice. And Emily, tell us a little bit about yourself and how things with your bubble.
I'm Emily Coatlier, and I'm a trainer and consultant here at Wright. And I would say we're a bubble without small children in it. So we've been a very hard-working bubble this lockdown. Different people, different rooms, different Zoom meetings. And I've been doing some writing on our training program's behalf while I've been at home, because behind each of our training courses is a lot of support material for our trainers. So I'm definitely feeling the topic of this workshop today, writing at home.
Awesome, nice. And I definitely take your point, Emily. Like, we're all in the same boat on this one, eh? So I'll be really interested to see how the discussion goes today. Okay, so let's get into it. So I'm going to be asking some questions today of Emily and Colleen, and we're going to have a bit of a chat about whatever comes up. So I'll be asking questions, but also I would invite you all viewers, wherever you are. There's a section down the bottom panel there where you can submit questions in the Q&A section. So it's right next to the chat function. And we've got some questions that we'll work our way through, and we're going to try and aim to keep it to a punchy half an hour. So we'll do our best to get to as many of your questions as possible. So let's start with Emily. We'll do a bit of, I guess, definition really, or talk a little bit about what's on top really. So the first question I have for you is, what's different when you're writing at home? Like, what are the big things, other than obviously you're not at work? Sometimes there might be things that we don't even think about that are difficulties. So what's different about writing at home?
The good part about writing at home can be that you're in a space you like without distractions. The bad part of writing at home can be that you have plenty of distractions around you, small children, pets, tasks that need to be done, personal alerts on your computer. I also find that a surprising amount of people aren't able to give themselves the best possible at-home setup. It's okay to take over a space on a table. I really encourage people to use an actual keyboard and to make sure that they're able to sit comfortably for a while. These really small things make a surprising difference when you are setting up a workspace dedicated to writing in particular. It's a little different from, say, setting up for a Zoom call. So those are some of my starting thoughts. Anything from you, Colleen?
I think for me, the scheduling is the big deal when writing from home. Like the time of day, like carving out a time of day, which is my focus time, is my big thing that I find different about when I'm at home. At the office, the whole thing is set up for focus and concentration, and at home that's not the case at all. And it's a case of being very deliberate for me about when is it that I'm doing my focused work.
Yeah, it's a good point, isn't it? And sometimes there are different times where we in the day where we do certain types of work better. Could either of you comment on when you write best? Do you write best in the morning, or do you write best in the evening?
I definitely am a morning writer and editor for professional work. If I'm being more creative, I'll actually do that in the evening after sundown when I'm more relaxed. We had a question come up in the Q&A. How often should you take breaks? And I find that it's good to take a break from intense focused writing about every half an hour for me. But I say that because I enjoy writing. And I've worked with other people for whom really focusing for 20 minutes and then taking a 10-minute break really helped them stay fresh.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think breaks are important, and depending on which stage of the writing process you're up to me that would vary the length of my the frequency of my breaks. So at the proofreading stage, I'll take breaks more often, because for me that's a mechanical kind of process. I can concentrate to the level I need to for about 15 minutes when I'm proofreading, and then I need a break literally for my eyes. Whereas earlier on in the process, like when I'm planning or when I'm just, literally typing the content, that I can focus for significantly longer, maybe 30, maybe 40 minutes before I need a break.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, let's change tack a little bit. So one of the difficulties I think with writing at home as opposed to work is we miss out on all of that incidental personal contact. So Colleen, a question for you. What do we do, or how do we get past this? So how do we use technology, or basically how do we get over that hurdle of not being able to see people in person?
Thank goodness for technology, eh? I guess that's where emails, Zoom, phone calls come in. I think the things I've noticed there that really make a difference are finding out from your workmates or the clients that you're working for at the time what method they prefer to be communicated with. Some people are phone call people, some people are Zoomers, some people just like email. And using the medium that your colleagues prefer goes a long way towards making communication smooth. Some people like things that are planned, and they like to be asked when is a good time to call. Other people are perfectly happy for you to call anytime. I think agreeing on those sort of things or finding them out earlier on is very a kind thing to do during lockdown, because you never know what other people's schedules are throwing up for them.
It's difficult as well, because I think the thing that I notice as well is that when you have to schedule things like a phone call or a Zoom meeting, you have to be very deliberate with how you catch up with people, and you don't get that that incidental those conversations, eh? So it feels like you're having to be very deliberate with your connecting with people. Emily, have you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, a lot of workplaces now have a virtual chat room where you can drop in and connect briefly with your coworkers. And this can be really helpful. At Write, we have several areas of our Write Slack where you can drop in and ask different kinds of writing questions. And there's almost always a remote colleague logged in who will give you some time. So if your organization has an online chat set up in Teams or in Slack or in another tool, maybe have a subgroup of that for writing questions.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. While we're on that topic, Emily, so a lot of organizations are using platforms where chat is a way to communicate. So I guess before, online chat platforms, it was very either in person or you were communicating in more formal style writing. What do you think has changed now that people are using more chat-based means of communication? And are there things that you would say people need to be kind of wary of when using it a lot?
I would say there's 3 things to keep in mind when you're doing a professional chat group. First is don't spend too much time swapping pet pictures, no matter how much fun it is. It's, just as we can get distracted at home, we can get distracted online too. Second, I would say, remember, these are your colleagues, even if you are more relaxed. And third, I would say the main problem I see when people are collaborating on Slack is people saying, wow, what we talked about last week or that link you shared was really great. Where is it? So you might need to be a bit better at keeping notes, because different chat rooms keep different levels of records and they'll often delete them after a while.
Colleen, any thoughts on chat at work?
If you're using it to communicate about jobs or work related stuff, be careful not to end up doing the half sentence semi-communication kind of typing. Make sure you're still using full sentences, and if you're asking for something, you make that clear with a question mark or something that makes it obvious that you haven't sort of descended into 2 or 3 word phrases that are really hard for other people to decode.
Let's jump in with a question here. So someone has asked, have you found that your word choice changes while we're all at home in lockdown, and how so? Have either of you seen any trends either with your own writing or writing that you've come across?
That's a really interesting question. And I think it almost opens up an opportunity if you are in an office that uses a lot of jargon or that clings to really old-fashioned styles of writing. I would say take this as an opportunity to try a little plainer language and see what people think. I would say that the main change I see myself making is taking a bit more trouble with my emails, because I know that when my email is going out, I'm not there 3 cubes over to wave and smile at the person. So maybe I'm taking a little more time with headings and things like that.
Colleen, anything for you? Anything you've noticed?
No.
That's all right.
Sorry,
That's fine. Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about tone, because I think that's one thing that is such a regular question that we get, isn't it? Is about how do you get the right tone? And one thing that is really difficult that I find with tone is that a lot of our natural tone comes through our voice, our volume, our pitch, and our hands, our hand gestures, and what we're doing, and our facial expressions. And so one of the difficulties with getting tone right in our writing is trying to squeeze all of that information through our writing. And this, of course, is more difficult when we're not able to see each other more face to face. And it's sometimes the reason why people think that emojis are starting to be more of a common communication technique. Can you talk a little bit about tone, Colleen? And also, what do you think about emojis?
All right. Well, I'll focus here on emails specifically, because that's where the problems tend to land. Emojis, it depends. To me, that can be acceptable, fine, in organizations where their brand or their deliberately chosen style is informal, friendly, a chatty kind of brand. If you come from a more an organization where that's not so appropriate, then yeah, I wouldn't go emojis on you. As far as emails go, so I have a few little things I always do in emails to make sure my tone is likely to be read how I intend it to. And this comes from lots of workshops where people have complained to me about, people who've been so rude in their emails. So my rules are always have a greeting, always have some kind of sign off. So hello, someone, he's something at the beginning and end of the email. If I'm requesting something, I will always include the word please, and I'll make sure that my request has a question mark to make there's something more polite about a request with a question mark. And the other thing I'll often do if I have some kind of relationship with the person is before I get down to the business of my email, I'll have a quick line in there with the human touch in some form. Anything that shows that I know the person and I'm hoping they're well. But for me, that one works best if it's done with integrity, where you're not just flinging off the same sentence you always write, but it's one that is tailored for that person. And if I do those things, I'm pretty sure my email's likely to be seen in the light I intend it to be.
And have you seen any differences in lockdown where people are needing to send maybe or at least do more of their communicating through email or other means?
Personally, I'm noticing that if I've ended up with 2 or 3 ping pongs with a person, one of us will pick up the phone. And I'm actually glad we're doing that, because it gets the job done quicker, and whatever those loose ends were we were trying to tie up, we get them done more efficiently.
Emily, any thoughts on tone or what you've observed about difficulties with kind of communicating tone effectively from home?
I think I might go back to emojis for a minute, because we see a lot of emoji use in those work chat rooms, and it's quite tempting to carry it over into an email. But one thing that makes emojis work with a chat is here and gone. And an email is supposed to last longer. Sometimes emoji sets won't last more than a year, so you'll just get little blank boxes. Sometimes an emoji can suddenly pick up a new meaning in a viral sort of social media way that might not be work appropriate. So I think our formal recommendation at Write is to keep emojis to a smiley face between colleagues or when things are going well, and to really work on expressing yourself well in your written tone.
Nice one. Let's go to a viewer question. So we've got a question here about proofreading and editing. What would your general advice be for someone who, especially with email tends to be a medium that maybe people don't take as much care as they should with editing and proofreading? Colleen, what would you advise?
I firmly believe that anything written for work you need to look at it at least once after you've written it to get it to the quality that you want it to be. It's almost impossible to write something perfectly first time. So my big tip would be have a rule for yourself of definitely reading it through once. And if you want extra help, I believe Outlook now at least has a read aloud function, so you can double check by hearing the machine read your email back to you whether or not you haven't got any glaring errors.
Emily, what's the cost of not editing or proofreading? Like, what are some of the things that you commonly would see go wrong when people haven't taken the time to edit or proofread their work?
With sending out something when we're mostly in lockdown, and when you catch yourself sending out a proofreading error, is you've got more time to brood over it, So, in a way, your reader may or may not notice. If they do notice, it never makes a good impression. But you will always know. You will carry that burden when you find it. So it's almost for our own selves that we are really thorough about proofreading. Take it from me. Yes.
Yeah, nice one.
Happens to the best of us.
And as to Claire's question in the chat about people who are brooding over their editing and getting sort of stuck on that step, going round and round. That's a tricky one. You can give yourself a time limit based on the length of the document and say, I've done all I can in X amount of time, given I was planning on spending this amount of time on the thing. You could ask a colleague to edit for you. Editing is a step that can be done by someone else if it's a really important draft and that's the reason you're obsessing.
Yeah,
One of the best things you can do is just take that 5 minutes away from the document, away from your screen. Stand up, do a few stretches, get a glass of water, give yourself a little break, and then look at it with fresh eyes. Whether you're proofreading or editing, it will give you some of the perspective you need.
Let's you both have shared quite a lot of great wisdom. So this may just be a time for you to share anything else that you can think of in terms of, I mean, the modern term would be hacks, you know, things that you can do to make your writing better when you're at home. So either of you have any hacks or suggestions for people who are viewing, just to make their writing easier? And this might be anything, really. Go for it, Emily.
One person had a question about using timekeeping tools such as Toggl or tracking apps to keep track of your writing work. And that's related to a hack that a lot of professional writers use, which is either called the Pomodoro technique, because the person who created it used a tomato-shaped timer. They would set a certain amount of time on the timer, put the timer down, sit at their workstation and do nothing but write until the timer rang. And the goal of this was for them to be highly productive and focused on what they were doing. They wouldn't do anything else but that writing task. Professional writers will also call this writing sprints. And you might even team up with a friend or a colleague. Hey, I'm going to do a 30-minute writing sprint. Anybody want to join me? And when you're done, you can compare what you've done. Maybe you can exchange it and do a quick edit for each other, or you can just say, you wrote, 500 words, great job. So it's a way of getting a little bit of connection back and making you accountable to you, but it also gives you that focus. I think for timekeeping, the dream is being so productive and in the flow that you lose track of time. So, but sometimes you might look over at the timer and go, is it time to stop yet? No, got to keep going. But this will often help you overcome blocks or that feeling of it being hard to get started.
And I think that can be difficult for a lot of people, isn't it? Can't it? Because I guess being in an office situation, it's a natural motivator because you're all there working together. And so when you are struck by the absence of those people around you, you do need those little tricks and techniques to help keep your accountability high, don't you? Colleen, anything that you want to share on that one, on productivity? Or what if you really need to take a brain break and you don't want to feel like you're wasting time? Any thoughts on that?
Oh, okay. Well, my big tip for if I need a brain break is, and I want to keep in work mode, change medium. So if I've been fluffing around with emails, I'll get a YouTube video and learn something that I need to learn for work. Or I'll call a colleague so that I'm not looking at the screen, but I'm doing something that I need to do anyway. Anything that flips that mental break. Yeah, I am also a big fan of short, sharp exercise. So I have a whole lot of YouTube 10-minute workout videos that I'll throw one on, do my workout, sit down again, ready to go.
Yeah, that's awesome, because there's nothing like fresh air and blood to your brain and all of that. Great. Go for it, Emily.
There was a question in the chat. What do you think of writing tools such as the Hemingway app? And I would like to address this directly because when we're working at home, we can often choose what we use. I would say if you're going with one of the big name writing apps, I actually like the Hemingway app, and I'll tell you why. Not because it's better or worse than some other well-known ones, but because its terms of service are less dramatic. If you are using the Hemingway web app and you copy and paste your content into it, it only keeps a record of your content for 2 weeks. If you download Grammarly or Hemingway, it will suck up everything you write into its own database and keep it forever. You might be okay with that as the price for some writing support, or you may be concerned about confidentiality. If you do have a concern about confidentiality, it's good to know. It's a pretty unusual terms of service. So one thing that you can do is you can actually go into Microsoft Word. You can go into File, Options, Proofing, and there in the Advanced or Settings option, you can set up to 200 editing options for free. And you can also turn them off whenever you get tired of them. So you can do a lot more with the Microsoft Word spell checker, which stays pretty anonymous.
Awesome, thank you, Emily. Yeah, I mean, reading those terms and conditions is not something that everybody does, right? So that's a really helpful tip, thank you. Hey everyone, we've got about 5 minutes left. So if you do have any questions for Emily or Colleen, please put them in the Q&A down the bottom. We've got a couple of other questions, but we'd love to get to some of yours as well. The next one we have is about grammar and finding the right words. This is something that can be difficult for a lot of people for a whole range of different reasons. So Colleen, what advice would you give for people who have difficulties with grammar, or they're just not sure? And also in terms of like dictionaries and tools and things to have around you, what would you recommend?
Okay, well, if we're assuming Word is our base, then that editor function or spell check function that Emily just mentioned is fabulous. It's great for people with English as a second language too. There are just so many things in there that you can turn off or on to help you catch things you don't catch yourself. I mentioned the read aloud function before, but it is a winner, especially for people who are unsure of their grammar. If it doesn't sound right, it's probably not right. And that can help you know which bits to throw into Google. Google has, you wouldn't believe how many grammar enthusiasts there are in the world, and they all have put advice into Google. So if you're not sure whether it's affect or effect, any of those little things, all of the answers are at your fingertips in Google. If you want a good dictionary, we'd recommend Lexico.com. That's the Oxford English Dictionary online. It's fantastic. For Māori words, the maoridictionary.co.nz is great. And Te Taura Whiria Te Reo Māori, the Māori Language Commission, has guidelines for Māori orthography. So if you're not sure about whether to hyphenate words, whether to space them, that's a really great and free resource that you can download. One more is the Right Style Guide. So we have a small style guide that we publish. So it's a manageable size. It shouldn't overwhelm you or drown you with information, but it's got heaps and heaps of useful grammar and punctuation guidance in it.
And this might be a good plug for any of you viewers who have style guides as part of your organization. All organizations should have one. This might be a good time to, if you're not sure where it is, find it. And if you use it semi-regularly, it might be a good chance to get back in touch with it and see what it's got to give you. Emily.
There were two questions that just came up in the chat around giving feedback if you're not with a colleague directly. And I think these resources Colleen has been discussing can be really helpful for that. I have two tips on giving feedback to somebody who's not there. First, remember that you can give positive feedback as well as negative feedback. There's that feeling of opening up a document and seeing it's full of notes and going, oh no. But if you start to read them and you see that they're like a conversation, it's more reassuring and you get more, you're getting feedback on all aspects of your work. If you're giving feedback and you think somebody could have written better, it's often tempting to rewrite. It can be more rewarding to highlight the section and using some of these resources Colleen mentioned, say, hey, based on good writing practice, this is, for example, a really long sentence. I had a hard time understanding it. Could you maybe break it down into 1 or 2 sentences that were easier to understand and maybe provide a link to your source so that they see it's not just you being picky, but you've got a genuine reason and you're trying to help.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to second your point about the positive feedback, Emily, I think it's sometimes people feel that when they're giving feedback, they're only looking for things that are negative. And to really grow as a writer, it can be really empowering to have someone point something out that you're doing really, really well, because sometimes there will be good writing habits that you have that you're actually not aware of. So for someone to make you aware of what they are is really, really handy. Colleen, have you got any thoughts on giving feedback?
I think Emily's covered the major ones. You do have the option to Zoom someone, to phone them as well. If you're not sure that it's going to land how you intended it to, you can preempt your messages that are written with something spoken.
You can Zoom and share screen, so you're looking at the same area of the document. Sometimes people working in Google Docs, where a shared document can be accessed by many people at once, you might have 2 or 3 people giving comments at the same time. That can actually be quite intimidating. If you're all online, check in a chat room or via email, and maybe see, right, you go first, you go second, or talk about how you can arrange it in a way that works well for all of you.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's about all the time that we have. So what I'll do is give each of you just a closing thought. It might be just to reiterate something that you've already said. It might just be something that you would like people to leave having remembered. So Colleen, just a final thought for everyone watching.
Okay. Here's my final thought, and I'm not sure if you can see it. It's called Deep Work by Cal Newport. I'd Google that book. It's fantastic for helping with strategies to focus and do really solid work at home or anywhere.
Awesome. Thank you. Emily?
I think the theme of this conversation about writing for work when you're working from home is about staying connected. So think about the ways of connection that work for you and your colleagues. Think of some of the newer ways of staying connected that are out there and see how well they work for you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's all we have. So thanks, Colleen and Emily, for your time and your expertise. And thanks, everyone, if you've clicked the link and you've observed the session. So we'd just like to take this opportunity to remind you that this is part of our Write Online program. So Write Online is a content library that you can be a subscriber as an organization or as an individual. And we'll be putting up this video as part of that content. So we're putting up new content every month on there. And it's a great chance to get access to our wonderful expertise from our consultants, but at your own pace. So you can send an email to online@write with a W, write.co.nz for more information. But that's about it from now. So all the best with wherever you are in the country or in the world. Hopefully you are writing better as a result of this, and all the best with your health and safety and your bubbles and everything. We'll see you again soon.